So today I'm going to talk about how you can create Drupal content by sending an email. And here's the URL if you want to follow the presentation. So my name is Miloš. I work as a Drupal 8 developer at MD Systems for about 2 years now. And I was a Drupal student at Google Summer of Code this year, where I was actually developing the module for our topic. So MD Systems is the world's leading Drupal contributor. We work full projects, bootstrap weeks, and consulting, all kind of projects, and we've been working with Drupal 8 for around 3 years now, and we have many projects in production that are running Drupal 8. We are especially proud of the fact that 20% of every project is back to the community. It's via country modules or core issues. So about the topic, you might wonder, why do we need emails? Why do we need to create Drupal content by email? We can just log into the site and we can go to the admin content, create a node, fill all the fields, validate it and save. But then we found the research by Redicate group that says that emails are still heavily used, and they predict steady growth 6% by year until 2019, and it will be around 5,500 million of email accounts. So even though there is a new Slack-like tool every week, the emails are still used. So in this we found our chance to provide users an option to create content by sending the email. So we identified some use cases where this can be useful. For instance, media publishing websites. If you have a news portal, then you might want to allow your editors to create content just by sending email from their favorite mail client. Also, we look at this as an additional channel of content creation. So basically, if your website is user content driven, then this can be just an additional channel to create content. You can do it by your website, by mobile app, or by email in this case. And it can be especially useful for comment replies. For instance, if you have comments for your website, and then you make a comment on it, and then you got reply on your email, you might want to provide another reply just by writing an email. So that can be really useful in this case. So in order to achieve this, we decided to use Mailhandler module. The module is quite around for some time in Drupal. It's been there since Drupal 6, and then there is a version for Drupal 7. But for Drupal 8, there was no such thing, so we decided to redefine it for Drupal 8. The main reason was because of its dependencies. The Mailhandler for Drupal 7 was dependent on the feeds that were not ready at the moment for Drupal 8, so we had to find another solution. So in this case, it's based on InMail module. InMail is a country Drupal 8 module that processes incoming emails. So we had a good base, so we can build just another thing based on the default mail processing. So because it's pluggable, it allows us to provide different plugins for InMail, for mail handling, and mail parsing as well. So to better understand this, I'm here presenting the picture of the current architecture of InMail. So the blue thing is Drupal, and the yellow thing is how InMail works. So there are three main concepts that we defined in InMail. That's concept of deliverer, concept of analyzers, and concept of handlers. So deliverers are basically your adapters to raw emails. They can be fetchers in this case. That can be IMAP or POP3 fetcher that connects to your mailbox and fetches the emails. Or for instance, it can be Drush deliverer, or it can be demo deliverer, where you can just paste your raw email and then we process it. The processor is the core of InMail. It works, it accepts the raw email from deliverer, and then it does some default email parsing, like validates the email message by RFC standards, provides MIME classes and MIME objects, and then we can handle references between mail parts such as attachment or inline images or text HTML part. So after processing, we basically create some object-oriented structure of an email. And then here we come to analyzers. There are basically plugins, same as deliverers and handlers. So here in InMail, we have verb and DSN analyzer that provide an option to detect bounce messages. But since it's highly pluggable, we can just create another plugin that's analyzer, and then we can try to analyze the message and identify if it's bounce or if it's something else that we need. On the other side, there are handlers. So handlers are basically, they do some actions based on analyzed data. So if we determine that the message is a bounce, then we have, for instance, here, mail mute handler, where we can say, okay, this message is bounce. We want to stop sending emails to the user that cannot be achieved. And these two empty places are actually the place for mail handler. Okay, so mail handler architecture is just like this. It provides a set of plugins for InMail. On the left side, there are 5 analyzers that we provide by default. It's PGP analyzer, entity type, sender, footer, and body analyzer. And on the right side, there are handlers that act on based on this analyzed data. It's node handler and comment handler. So PGP analyzer that provides default supports for digitally signed emails. So you can, for instance, in Thunderbird now you can set an option to send digitally signed emails, and then we can process it, and we can be sure that that you are the originator of that message, and it actually helps. With security, and we think it provides an additional layer of security, and it's especially easy setup. So by enabling this module and some PHP extension, you can get a high level of security for InMail. So what we need for PGP analyzer is just your public key, and then you have a private key on your computer. You sign the message, and then we check with the corresponding public key if it's verified, and then we can be sure that you are the originator, that message is not changed in transmission, and that it contains the same content. So basically it allows integrity. The other analyzer is entity type analyzer. So in order to detect the messages that are named for mail handler, we kind of introduced the protocol. So it's basically that you set entity type in and bundle information in your mail subject, and then we parse this thing and do validation based on entity type if it's valid, and bundle if it's valid. In general, this allows an option to extend mail handler, so it supports all entity types and all kind of bundles that you can have in your Drupal system. The other analyzer is sender analyzer. It basically identifies email sender by extracting the from field from your mail, and then it matches the user in our system. But since the from field can be easily faked, this analyzer is disabled by default, and we recommend using PGP analyzer. So then we use the public key, and we can be sure that you are the sender. But this is like on administrator, so it can be easily enabled. The footer analyzer. So the footer analyzer identifies the email message footer. For instance, you can have your default signature for your all emails, and then you don't want to have this part when you create content. So we have some basic implementation, and since this is sort of parsing emails and parsing text, it's really hard to properly detect the footer. So for now, we just have 2 cases supported. That's the first one where we have hyphen and the new line, and that's RFC 3676 standard for signature. And the other one is like this kind of pattern. That's de facto the Gmail standard. So So they are the only case that we support for now, and then the part below the identified patterns is a footer, and the upper part is just a mail body. So the body analyzer is another simple one. It identifies the mail body. For instance, after footer, we can be sure there is a mail body. Then we can do some kind of manipulation there. So when we identified our data with analyzer, the handlers are the next thing that are on the scene here. And the first one is node handler. So the first thing that it does, it's basically authenticates and authorize a user. So we can be sure there is you are the originator, and then that you have enough permissions to create a node in this case. It matches type, body, and UID and title fields based on analyzed data. And then at the beginning, we were talking about providing some sort of mapping where you can set the subject from the email will go to the title of the body, and then the body will go to the body, and stuff like this. But then we skip this part, and we assume that you want to have your mail body as a body and your subject as a node title. And basically, the result of the node handler is that it creates a new node entity. Similarly, there is another handler that's a comment handler. And what it does, it's sort of the same. It validates the user, it does the authentication, authorization, and in case of PGP signed messages, we do the signature verification. So these are the first 3 steps that we do, and then if the user is confirmed, then we are going to the next steps. If not, we just stop the process. The additional thing here is that in case of comments, we need to extract the referenced ID information, so the comments are attached to another entities, so then they would have the comment type and comment bundle, and also the referenced ID in their subject, so we can be sure where this comment applies. So at the end, it matches entity type, entity ID, subject, comment body, and UID from the mail to the comment fields. Similarly, the result is a new comment entity that's created, and both comments and nodes are published by default. So if you want to, if you think about permissions, then you want to be sure that the user has enough permissions to create those entities. That's basically what we check. So the mail handler is sort of just additional way of creating content, and the permissions are the same. So here's the demo, how it works. Maybe I can go. Okay, I'll go full screen here. So yeah, the first thing, there are 3 modules provided by Mailhandler. That's comment, demo, and default one. So in this case, we are enabling Mailhandler demo. So it takes some time because it has some dependencies on InMail module, in this case InMail demo, and the other sub-modules of InMail. Okay. So when it's enabled, then we can check there is a new user created, and then in this demo installation, we have a demo user that already has preloaded public GPG public key and fingerprint information. So this is the thing when we what we use to check that your PGP sent email is actually valid and verified. There is a fingerprint. So GPG is just a new field on a user entity where each user can submit its own public key. So these are the deliverers, the plugins. We use the paste deliverer, that's just a demo plugin where you can paste the raw email. On the other side, there are analyzers, and we can see all the analyzers provided by InMail or Mailhandler here. And they are just config entities and instances of the plugins. So they are just basically enabled. They have labeled, but they can be easily changed and updated later. And on the handler side, we have 2 handlers. It's Node and where we can set content type that can be detected from the subject, or you can just configure it that all emails should go in article, page, or any other bundle. It's similar to the comments. And then here we can have an example of PGP signed emails that just paste it in the text area. And then here's the from information that was highlighted. And then we process the email. It's not too much different than the actual process. It would just require that you could go to your mailbox and write email, send it, and then we receive it and process in the same way. So if you go to the content, there should be a PGP signed email that's created with the title and the body and the demo user, the author, and all the PGP signature and stuff that was removed through processing phase. Here's the another example of comment. In this case, it's not PGP signed, but it works the same way. We process the email, and then we parse it, and there should be a new comment created here. Yeah. So in production, it should work in a way that you connect to the real mailbox, and then on cron, we check the mailbox and try to fetch emails, and if we identify it's named for Mailhandler, then we do some actions and we provide some additional analysis. If not, we just skip all the parts, and then the mail should go to administrator or somewhere else. Okay. So the current status of InMail and Mailhandler, they are still under development. We are still doing a lot of API changes, and that's the reason why we don't want to release it yet. It's sort of ready to be alpha, but it's still there because we are changing the stuff every day. And then InMail has a full integration with Collect. Collect is another country module that stores these emails. So InMail just processes it, and then Collect serves as a storage space there. Also, all the features and all the tasks implemented there are heavily test covered. We have web tests, and we have unit and kernel tests for all the features that are presented here. Also, in the last weeks, we were working very hard to implement email display. So now Drupal website can just display the email. Here we have some default header information, then plain and HTML part of the text, and even attachments that you can download. So if you want to, if you work with the emails, and then if you have a raw email you want to display, then you can just new InMail element. It's called InMail message. Provide your content, and then it will look something like this. There are many steps that we need to complete here. For instance, we are doing XSS filtering on HTML, so some HTML display will not look like in your mail display, but that's for security reasons, and we are working on this to override it and to fix it. So for the next steps and the future of Mailhandler and InMail, we have an idea and initiative by MD Systems to create a CRM feature from the Drupal, and that should be achieved in the combination of InMail. That should work as a incoming mail processor with Collect. That should work as a storage, and CRM core that should later process these containers from Collect, and then for instance create contacts or create activities that are based that are coming from your email. In this case, we can achieve the combination of creating just one content that's sort of a user entity on your website, and then try to match that same content on your another Drupal website using Collect client module and InMail module that should send all the data to Collect server. Then we process it, and then we create just one contact. It's sort of interesting, but it's still an idea, and we should start working on this by the end of the year or starting next year. And on the mail handler side, we have this idea for Drupal 7 to handle Drupal commands. So that's sort of a command interface that you can send the email with -cr or cache clear, and then we try to parse it and process it and do some actions in the same way. But that's still like an idea. We'll see how it goes. And the other thing is here, it's rules integration. So when the rules are ready for Drupal 8, we are thinking about replacing our analyzers and handlers. So we do some UI configuration base, so where you can just say when there is an incoming mail, do this and do this with our handler. So it's kind of easy for users to set and react on incoming emails. That's more or less it about this topic, and thank you for listening to me and for coming after the party again. If you have some questions, I'll try to answer them. Thanks. Yes. Excuse me? Can you? Yeah, for node handlers, you can set to automatically detect from the subject. So in subject, you can say, this email should go to node and to article, then we use that. Or you can just say, every incoming email should go to the article. For instance, if you have the blog content type and then you write your blogs from email, then every blog can go into blog content type. It's similar with the comments. You can configure it, or we can try to detect from the subject here. Other? Okay, then that's it. Thanks for listening. See you. Bye.